party people. There are 10 things that you need to know about the ZEV Technologies OZ9 before you decide to spend your money. And trust me, these are some things that you're really gonna wanna know if you were interested in checking these guys out. So the first thing that you need to know is what my experience with ZEV Tech is like in the past. In 2016, the very first Glock trigger that I ever purchased for a Glock was the ZEV Technologies Fulcrum trigger. And it came with a ton of different parts. And that trigger actually functioned really well. I had a great experience with it. About a year and a half after that, I had a friend who had two ZEV Technologies Glock slides. The slides were so far out of spec, they wouldn't even fit on an OEM Gen 3 Glock frame. And I had 4 Glock frames to choose from at the time. Couldn't fit any of them. And he ended up just sending them back, getting a refund and getting a different slide. Fast forward to 2018, I was doing another custom Glock build and I bought the ZEV Pro trigger. And that trigger had all sorts of problems that I was actually never able to completely fix. The trigger bar, something about it was out of spec. It was one of the hardest trigger pulls that I ever had. I just tossed it in my parts bin with the other stuff that I don't use. I said, hey, I'll try to fix it one day when I get around to it. Exactly another year later, in 2019, a good friend of mine took his OEM Glock and he sent it to ZEV Tech to have the full treatment done to it. And he kept having a problem with it going back into battery. I went through his gun completely and I just couldn't seem to find the problem. Turned out it was the trigger. I swapped it out, everything else stayed the same, connector and all that, and I put that trigger in, took it out to the range, never had another problem. So I just gave him that. Up until now, that's kind of been my experience. I've had about 4 experiences. 3 out of the 4 have been pretty negative. Didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if this was gonna be a hit or if it was gonna be a miss. Let's unbox it and let me show you what comes in the box because there's actually quite a bit. Comes in this it's actually a really good case. It says IP67 rated waterproof. I'm actually impressed with this case. It's this cool red color, has their name on it right there. You have a place where you could put a lock on it right here as well as up here. So in the box, you get your gun, 2 mags. Now, obviously you're not gonna get the red dot because you're gonna have to purchase that separately. Then right here, it's Velcroed into place up on the back side of here, and you get a bunch of goodies in the box. So first off, you're gonna get 2 magazines. They are gonna be PMags. PMags work great. I have nothing against them, but they made it to where if you put an extension on these mags, you could actually fit them in there as well. That's a good way to be forward thinking. In addition to that, there is a piece of foam that you could pull out right here in case you decided to put a full-size slide on here. You can pull that out and do that as thick. And then there's also a cutout for the red dot, which we're gonna talk more about the red dot here in a minute. So here's the gun itself. It looks really sexy. Now, my first impressions when I pulled this out of the box is I really like the way the grip feels. Now, I originally ordered this with the compact size grip module, which I have right here, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. But this is kind of like your Glock 19 grip module, and this is kind of like your Glock 19X grip module. When you actually get it, you're gonna have the cover plate where the red dot goes instead of a red dot. So I just put that in a baggie here. And then they give you the hardware to mount the red dot. You're also gonna get 2 striker springs. One is gonna be a 2-pound spring, and one is gonna be a 3-pound spring. And then there is like an OEM weighted spring in there right now. And basically what these do is they allow the trigger to pull at a lighter weight, but you do make some sacrifices when you use these. The first sacrifice you make when using lighter firing pin springs is you do have the possibility of getting light primer strikes, which they said that they've accommodated for using their special skeletonized firing pin, which we'll show you in a second. But the second problem you get is you get a lot slower and weaker reset with lighter spring. But it is interesting to see that they did include the extra springs so you can tune the trigger for how you want. That is kind of nice of them. And then when you're done with this, you can just stick it back into your box. Has a little piece of Velcro right there. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this pig. Everything about it is almost just like a Glock. This is based on the Gen 3 slide, but you also have a Gen 4 sized mag release on it. So keep that in mind. But there's only 1 pin that you have to remove. So this whole piece is made out of some kind of metal. I don't know if it's aluminum or not. I don't have a magnet to test it. And then from here, there are 2 pins here that remove the trigger. and the trigger bar and the trigger housing and all that stuff. So theoretically, you should be able to use different slide stop, slide releases. You should be able to use different triggers, trigger connectors, trigger springs, trigger housings, and you should be able to use different takedown levers as well. Very interesting. I'm not gonna go and take it apart because the actual trigger housing is sitting inside this metal casing right here, and I just don't feel like taking it apart right now. I do notice that the takedown pin, over time, it does get a little bit looser. Not so loose that it's gonna fall out, but it loosens up so you don't need a hammer to always remove it. Then you can put the slide back on. Now you have a Glock 19 sized handgun. Now, something interesting about this that I do really like. So this is my MR920 War Poet. This is my current everyday carry gun. From here to here, I get almost the perfect amount of distance between my pinky and this ring finger up here, and it allows me to really get a good grip on here. Now this one, if we look at it, I do believe that this distance here is shorter than the distance on here. So if I get my finger up underneath this trigger guard, you can see where my pinky lands. It lands kind of like right here. Whereas on this one, so it doesn't land on the front of the mag well, whereas this one it does. However, I did find, although it's kind of a tight squeeze in here, that it really allows me to hang on to this gun really well. Speaking of hanging on to guns, I wanted to show you a product that I just picked up. I'll have a link for this over at the parts list if you want to check this out. You just follow the first link in the description, but this is called Grip Shield. It's to help your hands be more tacky, but it doesn't make them sticky. This stuff's really made for like tennis players and stuff. I paid like $9 for it, and you don't need a ton of it. It's just a liquid, you put it on your hands. Dude, it's almost like putting Velcro on your hands when you go to grip your gun. Love this stuff to death. I will, like I said, I'll have a link to it. Now, although this is a modular handgun, similar to the P320, there are some limitations. Now, earlier in the video, I mentioned that the modularity of this is limited more so than the P320. What do I mean by that? There's two sizes that you can buy, maybe three. There is what's called the ZEV Technologies Standard, which is gonna be the Glock 17 size. Then there's the ZEV Tech OZ9 Compact, and then there's the Compact X. This one started its life as a compact with the grip that I showed you when we were up close. Now, if you bought the standard size, you can't take the frame module from the 17 size and put it into a grip module that was made for the compact. They're not interchangeable like that. Also, if you get the Glock 17 size, you can't put a shorter slide on it. So in my opinion, the compact is the better option to buy, especially if you are interested in changing parts out and swapping stuff out. For example, this is the full size 17 frame right here, but it's still got the 19 size slide, so it's kind of like the Glock 19X. But what if you wanted a full size slide? You can't just take a Glock 17 upper and put it on here because the barrel lugs in the Gen 3 Glock 17 barrels, it will get stuck on your locking block, so don't do that. But this is a Brownells Glock 19 long slide. I did a build with this gun back in early 2018. It's been a really good slide, and they've since improved them even more. Now they have optics ready ones, but here I basically have a full-size Glock 17, and I've checked all the safeties, the drop safeties, everything, does the magazine lock open? Yes, everything works flawlessly. So in a nutshell, you can go from a Glock 19 to a Glock 17. And so because you can't take the compact frame module and put it into the full-size grip modules, and you can't take the full-size grip module and put it into the compact grip modules, it's pretty limited on which way you can go. However, with SIG, for example, if you guys haven't followed my channel before, this was a build. This is a SIG Sauer P320 Legion. I got the frame separately. I actually have the Legion slide in my safe, and then I did a compact slide with a compensator on it. I have a full series about this if you want to check it out, but this started life as an 80% module, and it started life as a compact P320. And then when I got these parts, I was able to take that frame module and put it into the full size frame. SIG Sauer doesn't have those limitations from going from full size to compact like this one does. Another thing is when the P320 first launched with its modular frames, not only could you buy different color grip modules like you can for this, but you could get different sized grip modules. And I'm not talking about the size in which what size magazines fit. I'm talking about this and talk about in the length in here. All P320s came with a medium-sized grip. So that way it would fit the most people. But if you had smaller hands, you could get a small sized grip. Or if you had larger hands, you could get a large sized grip. You could get it really close to fit your hand almost perfectly. With these, yes, you can get different colored frames, you can get different length frames, but you can't get different grip sized on the frames. I don't know if ZEV Tech plans on implementing different grip sizes in the future, you know, for hand sizes, but I would think that that would be something beneficial for them and as a way to kind of stand out a little bit more. As I was at the range, I made sure to test a variety of different mags, mainly OEM Glock mags for both Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, whatever, and the ETS Group mags. I do want to give a big shout out to ETS Group for sponsoring today's video. If you don't know anything about them, they make these awesome translucent mags of various sizes and colors, and they make them for a bunch of platforms, not just Glock. And they make these really awesome speed loaders that you can pick up, and it really saves your thumbs the wear and tear from loading mags at the range. I actually do use them quite frequently, and I've been using them since I got one back in 2018. I never recommend carrying aftermarket mags. However, with that said, I do advocate using these for the range so you can wear these magazines out and then save the good OEM magazines for when you're actually going to defend yourself. That way, if you ever have a malfunction, you can't blame it on the magazine. Now, the sixth thing that you need to know, how compatible is it with aftermarket parts? So we're going to talk about two things right now. We're going to talk about compatibility with aftermarket parts, and we're also going to talk about problem that I've been having with this gun. So before we get into the compatibility, it's important we talk about the problem I've been having. I've been having an issue with this trigger. Not a reliability issue, just a feel issue. As an example, when I first got this gun, I put 150 rounds through it. This trigger was really gritty and it reset very slow. And I have since kind of fixed some things, and I'll talk about that in a second, but let me just show you now. It's not even 100% fixed. So you see the stutter, okay? When I go to press the trigger, stutter, stutter, and then it hits the wall and breaks through. So before, not only was I getting the stutter before, I was getting the stutter all the way back. So right now, the way it's breaking now is I get the stutter until it breaks, and then when it breaks, it seems to be clear. Also, before, the reset was not fast at all. You know, I try to do the trigger reset like John Lovell teaches, where you release the reset while the gun's recoiling, and when you come back down, you're on the wall, then you can press it again. I can't do that with this gun very easily. And so I've had to change a few things, and let me show you what I did. So whenever I have a problem with the trigger feeling kind of funny, not that it's malfunctioning, the first thing I do is I start polishing. Now this is the ZEV Tech connector that came with the gun. And you'll notice up at this top edge, where this punch is pointing to, there is a chunk just kind of missing out of here. And I had to file that down because it was creating like this ridge that the trigger bar was grinding on. So I got this thing all polished up and I put it back in the gun. It didn't fix my problem. So then I took the trigger out, the trigger bar out, polished the entire thing, made sure there was no burrs on it, put it back together, still didn't fix my problem. Then I went on the inside of this frame with everything removed, polished all of that up, still didn't fix my problem. And I didn't have any extra, you know, minus connectors or dot connectors laying around. So I ordered this new connector that I'd never heard of. And this is called, this is the box that came in. It's called the Ghost Angel 3.0 connector. I've never heard of this and I wanted to try it out. Pop that pig in. It solved a lot of the problems, but it didn't solve all the problems. You know, and when I did my polishing, I also made sure that my safety plunger was polished up. There was no burrs on that. I also made sure there was no burrs on my firing pin back here, but I don't think that's my problem. And the reason I don't think that's the problem is I'm gonna show you this real fast. We're gonna do a trigger pull test. And we are going to just pull back here, kind of towards the bottom of the trigger. I'm not gonna help the trigger, but I do have to hold my finger here sometimes because it starts sliding. All right, so with this connector that I got in there, we're pulling just a hair under 4 pounds. We'll do one more to confirm. Yep, same place, just a hair under 4 pounds. Now before this connector, this thing was pulling at like 5 pounds. I made sure that I didn't have any friction, you know, back in here. I played with the bend angle of the connector. I've smoothed everything out, but I was still getting a gritty trigger. So then I kind of came back to here and I tested this guy right here on my plunger. I'm getting no resistance there. So the only other place where I could be having problems is in my firing pin. But before I take this apart, let me show you what I mean. And this is gonna blend into compatibility with aftermarket parts. This is an OEM Gen 3 Glock slide that I had modified by Loki Tactical. All the internals in here are OEM, but they were polished. There's no lightened springs or anything. Now let me show you how this trigger pulls. So you remember the stutters from before, right? Completely gone. That's amazing. Now let me show you this. This is where it gets even kind of weirder. Just a hair over 3 pounds. Let's do that again. I think I overpulled that. Right at 3 pounds. That's a huge difference. That's a 0.75 pound difference just from changing the slide. Actually looks kind of good, huh? OD green and flat dark earth. Oh man, I might have to Cerakote another slide to OD green and start running this. But watch this trigger pull. It has a tiny bit of stutter, but not that much. This is a Legion Precision slide. This one does have aftermarket internals, so that might not be a good example, but we'll try it. Oh wow, that feels really good. I think this one has a lightened spring in the safety plunger. Very nice. This is the Brownells long slide with, it's not OEM parts, but they're like OEM parts. There's nothing that's lightened in here. Oh, that probably has the best one, watch. Difference between the trigger pull with this slide versus the trigger pull with this slide, this one's kind of like trying to walk through deep mud. That's the only way I know how to explain it. And this is like the feeling you get when you're not walking through deep mud. It's like you've been walking through deep mud and then you come out of the mud and it's like you're free. That's the way the trigger pull feels. So what is the issue? I think the issue has to do with these spring cups, possibly this piece of plastic, I forgot the name of it, I can't think, or possibly the channel liner down in there. Now channel liners can cause a lot of problems because here's a channel liner here that I'm gonna replace it with. I think this is a polymer 80 channel liner, but when this is going through, you can feel drag. That's just from the spring, but it's different. It's almost like when I go to push it, you can kind of see how my hand stutters. Now let me show you something different here. I like this little tool because I can place this on here. I can change out my spring cups. Here's something I noticed about these spring cups, and I don't know if I can get this on camera or not. It really looks like bits of metal impregnated into the end of this. I don't know if that's on purpose, or maybe I can only see it because these are red instead of black, but nonetheless, we're gonna change out those. So one of the cool things about having a ton of parts laying around is I don't gotta order parts to play with it. I can just change them out on the fly and see what happens. Oh, going back to what I was talking about earlier, this is their skeletonized firing pin, and supposedly, I don't remember if this is titanium or not, but they used to have a titanium one, but supposedly this solves the problem of light primer strikes when you're using lighter springs. I wanted to show you that real fast. Okay, so all we changed was spring cups on the firing pin. That is it. We didn't change the spring weight. We didn't even change the channel liner yet. But look at this. Look how much cleaner that trigger brake is. You don't see the stutters. Sometimes they're kind of there, but they're very clean. Let's try, see what the weight was. Now before, we were at about 3.75 pounds. And now we're just a hair over 3.5. Let's try that again. So we're back up to about 3.75 pounds, but the difference is I don't feel like I'm walking through sludge. The reset's really fast. So it seems like the problem was in the plastics. And I've had this problem in the past with other aftermarket companies. This isn't something that is just ZEV related. Sometimes these little plastic pieces can come out of spec, and then they're basically just dragging on the inside of here. And so sometimes it's your spring cups. Sometimes these channel liners will shrink when they get real hot sometimes, and they will kind of tighten down around perfectly good spring cups. So I'll have more info about this stuff when the course comes out. I'll have a link below so you can get more information about the course and all that. But we learned a couple things here. Not only did we learn how to fix a gritty trigger pretty easily, but we also learned that you can use any other Gen 3 Glock slide on here that your little heart desires. It's gonna take a Gen 4 slide release, but everything else will be Gen 3. Just an FYI. The seventh thing you need to know is the optics mount footprint and the co-witnessing of the iron sights. So all ZEV Tech guns come with the Trijicon RMR footprint, which means it will fit the Trijicon RMR, the Trijicon SRO. It will also fit the Holosun 507C, the Holosun 407C, and this is something brand new that I'm testing. I don't even know if this one is on the market yet, but this is the Veridian RFX 35, and it is a green dot and has a big circular window, very similar to the Trijicon SRO. But what's different about this, it's about half the price of a Trijicon SRO. Now with the sights, you get the fiber optic sights. They don't look like suppressor height sights. You know, typically when you run a red dot, you want some taller sights so you can get the co-witnessing in case your dot goes out. However, these look to be standard height, but the cool thing about these is you can still get a 100% co-witness with them using either a Trijicon RMR, Holosun, or even this RFX 35. And I thought that was very nice that I didn't have to think about buying new sights. Sometimes the optics ready guns don't come with sights that are gonna work with them, and this one happens to work very nicely. So how does this actually feel to shoot at the range? So currently I have between 400 and 500 rounds through this gun of various types of ammo. I tried some 115, some 124 grain, some 147 grain, and none of it was reloaded. It was all factory new. A lot of it was aluminum, a lot of it was brass. Everything cycled flawlessly. I didn't have a single malfunction with this gun. In regards to recoil mitigation, now, you know, having the added weight of this chassis system inside, you know, it's made of metal. It is a lot heavier than a standard Glock. Now, one thing I do applaud ZEV Tech for is the front being metal is actually a good thing. Because it's metal up here in the front, it's gonna make it a little bit more front heavy, which is gonna bring the sights back down quicker when you're shooting. Similar to that is like the CZ Shadow 2. They do the same thing. They add weight at the front of the frame. And this is a super flat shooting gun. Love this gun to death, but it does add a little bit weight to it. But is it actually noticeable? So here's some footage of me shooting this gun. And then I'm gonna show you some footage of me shooting my everyday carry gun, which is the War Poet Shadow Systems MR920. Now, one thing is for sure, because I had that problem with the trigger being kind of gritty, kind of being slow to reset, at least it felt like, I wasn't able to shoot this near as fast as I can my MR920, and I wasn't able to be as comfortable with it as I was with my MR920. And I thought that was kind of strange because in the hand, it actually feels really nice. They got all the ergos right on here, and I love the way that it feels. But the funny thing about that is it didn't really translate into me being any faster or any more proficient than with any of my other guns that I typically shoot very well. Now let's talk about the pricing. So the street price on the compact OZ9 or the Compact X is between $1,700 and $1,800, kind of depending on where you pick it up from. So it is a little bit on the pricey side, but it's not as bad as some others that I've seen in the past. You know, as an example, some of the Agency Arms Glocks are over $2,300. Some of the Salient Arm Glocks are over $2,300. And although I really appreciate that they have different grip sizes that you can buy, and I appreciate that they went through the trouble of creating a chassis system that is weighted so that you can get a little bit faster follow-up shots, you know, because I'm not much faster with this than I am with my MR920 War Poet. If it was my money and I didn't have either one of these, I would buy this one 5 times before I would buy this one. This has just been proven to be a really good gun. I've gone through a training class with it, and it has the most advanced multi-optic system that I've ever seen before, and I'm just good with it. I'm not saying that this is bad. I'm just saying this is about $300-ish more than what I can get this for, and this works better for me. I'm not saying that this is a better gun, just better for me. I do think that this is worth the money, but like I said, in the past, I've had 3 out of 4 experiences with ZEV Tech products to be kind of bleh, and this one wasn't bleh, but I did have to go through the trouble to fix this trigger in here to make it actually function right. Here's my motto. If you're gonna make a $1,500 gun, it better have a nicer trigger than what comes in a Gen 5 OEM Glock 19. My Gen 5 triggers from the factory are miles better than this one was. And to me, that is a major fail. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I have a sample size of 1. This could have been a one-off. However, based on the track record that I've had with ZEV Tech, it's not surprising. I'm not bashing them as a company. I think that they really just need to work on their QC before they let things go out the door. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments section. I love you. You guys stay sexy.